Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another week of Behind the Mic here on Amateur Sports TV. Jonathan Hodgson back with you for another week. We have another fun conversation lined up for you this evening, and once again, thanks for tuning us in on your Friday night, wherever you may be tuning in from. I want to start this evening's episode by wishing a congratulations to a friend of the show who was going to be making his first appearance here this evening on the show, but he has much more important duties to attend to. We originally had Cam Moon scheduled to appear tonight, but I received word from him a couple of days ago that he has, and of course it went public before I got it, but he has been named the new radio voice of the Edmonton Oilers. And that happened a couple of days ago, so he asked if we could postpone while he gets up to Edmonton and gets his feet on the ground with the Oilers. So once again, congratulations to Mooner, and we look forward to having him on next time he has a chance to fit us in. So today, we have a great show lined up. A good friend of mine and a rising star in college basketball and the baseball broadcasting world, Alex Jensen, is joining us from California this evening. We look forward to talking a little college hoops and a little bit of baseball and catch up on some old stories, I'm sure, as the two of us go. We go back a little ways, as I'm sure you're going to find out. So we're going to toss it to break, and we'll be back on the other side with the radio voice of St. Mary's College basketball, Alex Jensen, here on Behind the Mic on Amateur Sports TV. And once again, welcome back to Behind the Mic on Amateur Sports TV. Jonathan Hodgson with you, bringing in our guest this evening. It is the voice of St. Mary's College men's basketball, Alex Jensen. Alex, thanks for coming on.
John, it's good to see you, man. Appreciate you having me on. Am I the first American
You are.
join you here? Wow,
You are.
I got to say I'm honored, but thanks for having me on, man. It'll be good to chop it up with you.
We have a lot to get into today as you spread your talents across multiple sports and multiple teams, so it's going to be a lot of fun. But of course, we have to start it off by setting the scene a little bit and having a little bit of fun, of course, to let some people in on some of the joke. But first off, more important things, of course. How have things been going for you down in California through this weird year?
All things considered, everything's been fine. I mean, everyone's healthy, first of all. That's most important. And just trying to get one day to the next. I mean, I've done some kind of odd jobs throughout the year to make up for lost time. I mean, 2020 was actually supposed to be my first year with the Stockton Ports, who are the Class A affiliate of the Oakland A's here in Northern California. So did not get a baseball season in 2020, obviously. We're hoping, knock on wood, for one that starts soon in 2021. But, all things considered, man, everything's been fine. I mean, we, like I said, everyone's healthy. It gives, people in our profession some time to kind of work on our craft and do some different things. And, so I think all of us as people really gained a good perspective this year, if nothing else, of what's really important in life. So I'm really thankful for that. And of course, everyone's health. And
as we alluded to off the top, you and I go back, I believe it's now about 14 years, if you can believe that. You came by the sports broadcasting thing quite naturally, coming up as a baseball player in your playing days. The two of us crossed paths in the Western Canadian Baseball League with the Okotoks Dogs.
Yeah, no, those were some good times, man. Days that I will never forget. I'll never forget when I was first kind of introduced to the idea, at St. Mary's College where I played baseball. Our coach wasn't sending anybody out for summer ball. So our friend Brett Thomas, who I played in junior college with, and is still one of my really good friends to this day, he shot me a text and just said, "Hey, it would be great to play with you again. Here's where I'm playing summer ball." So, I took a look at the website, saw this brand new stadium that was going to be built. And, I reached out, and the next thing I knew that summer I was in Alberta. And boy, was it one of the best decisions I ever made, going back for 3 consecutive summers. And, some of the success we had on the field, but also off the field was, I think that was even more significant, at least in my life. Just the people that I met, and living somewhere else, which I really still haven't done on a full-time basis outside of the Bay Area. That's really my only experience doing so. But yeah, I mean, we do go back a lot. How old were you that first year, 2007? Because I was turning 21.
I would have been 15.
15. Yeah. So and then how everything kind of evolved, getting to visit the booth with you. I knew that was always something that I wanted to do, or at least try. And I remember I got to call a Canadian junior national team game against Chinese Taipei. That was the first game I've ever called, and it was a blast, man. I mean, you know how addicting this stuff is, and I guess you could say that's kind of where I got my start.
Well, you're one of my claims to fame, because what I remember as you mentioned, you're dipping your toe into the broadcast side when you're playing with us there during your college career. I remember that that was right when I took the job for the first time, the broadcast play-by-play job for the Dogs, and I had been an on-field, basically part of the team in my really young years, but knew that, okay, I need to turn baseball into something sustainable. And so our owner, John Arcadia, says, "Hey, we moved into a new stadium. We have a big fan base all of a sudden, but we didn't have a broadcaster last year. Do you want to try that?" And I said, "Okay, but I don't know what I'm doing." And they gave it to me, no leash, just make it your own. And one of the things that I expressed to them was, I don't want to, I was a little bit apprehensive about losing that teammate dynamic that I love so much. That, of course, you would know that I wouldn't have had that teammate dynamic if it were not for what I had with the Dogs. And so I didn't want to lose that by going upstairs. And so one of the things that ended up happening was you came on, and I remember we did some playoff pre-game shows. You would come up to the booth about 30 minutes before the game. We would run through a 20-minute playoff pre-game show, and you would run back down for the game.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. That was.
I do remember that. It was a challenge to play catch and get warm. But it was, it was so much fun.
And then, of course, you alluded to, I believe it was your second year in 2008. The Dogs hosted what was basically a pre-tournament series for 3 different teams before the U18 World Juniors, which were in Edmonton that year. And so we hosted Canada, US, and Taipei. And I remember that I believe you might have worked beside me for one game, but I remember there was an afternoon game not involving us. And I believe that's what you were alluding to, where yourself and starting catcher, team captain / all-around legend, Brett Thomas, came on as your number 2, and the two of you took a game.
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, I remember asking you and John if I could do that. And like I said, it's always something I wanted to do. And I was actually jealous of you that you were able to do it every single day. Because my playing career was basically over. I was just kind of having fun in 2008, which was after my senior year. And I knew I wasn't going to get drafted. So I was kind of looking toward the next thing. And I was jealous of you, John, getting to sit up there and call the games, which, I mean, I don't really consider that work. I think that's it's just a good time.
So from there, you took it and ran with it. You've had a number of different positions with different teams. A lot of them at your alma mater at St. Mary's. I remember I joined you at the University of San Francisco for a St. Mary's USF game one time. During your time calling the baseball team, you've done volleyball, women's basketball, and now you've kind of got the plum job at St. Mary's with the men's basketball team. Talk about that process, about transitioning from a player dabbling in the broadcast side to going all in with it, and how it got you where you are now.
So the one thing I did know, John, was after I stopped playing was that, like I said, I always wanted to try this at least. I mean, I didn't know if it would turn into a career or if it would just kind of be a hobby. So, I basically, I went to the athletics department at St. Mary's after I graduated and say, hey, I just want to call baseball games in the spring. So, let me know what I have to do that, and I'll do it. And that's kind of part of this business that I've learned is that, not every job that you take, not everything that you do is exactly what you may want to do, but everything that you do helps, build you into what you eventually become. So they stuck me on volleyball PA, and I remember I was a little apprehensive about it. I was like, I don't know, I really just want to do radio or, just call the game. But I did it. And, I think it kind of helped, build a foundation a little bit. So by the spring I was doing baseball games and also helping out with women's basketball games. Another guy that was a student that was there, he eventually graduated after that year. So I got the women's basketball games all to myself. I could do as many baseball games as I wanted, which was great. I mean, I wasn't getting paid anything, but it was great. The number one thing in this business is you have to get field experience, as you know, right? You can go to school for it. You can do all this other stuff. This is my opinion. I mean, other people may have a different take on it, but you can do all these things, but until you're really sitting there with a microphone in front of your face and you're presented with all these different situations, you're really, I just don't feel like you're going to get the exact education, if you will, that you need to succeed. So I felt fortunate to be doing games, and I was doing women's games for 3 years, basketball wise. Like I said, as many baseball games as I want. And of course, I had my eye on the men's basketball job. At the same time, mind you, I was doing public address for the men's games, which was fun. Wasn't what I wanted to be doing exactly. So my break kind of came, if you will, at this early stage of my career. My break kind of came when the St. Mary's, the guy that was doing the men's games on the radio, him and his family relocated to New Orleans. And he'd been doing the games for 12, 15 years, something like that. And so I went to the powers that be at St. Mary's and I said, hey, I'd be crazy if I didn't put my name in for this. Even though I was doing PA and whatever. And I got it. I think the fact that I was an alumni had a lot to do. I felt like I was getting better by doing games on the women's side, but I really gained an appreciation after that for the preparation that goes into every single game. Because really, when I first started, I just roll in with a roster and call the game. And I found myself having to look down and who was that on the other team, right? No way to do it. I would never do that now. I put in 4 to 6 hours of prep time per game nowadays. So, here I am 4 years in, and I'm getting to call games for a top 25 caliber program. We went to the tournament that first year. I'm a guest on radio shows in Spokane and in Tennessee. And, I'm the guy that's on the other end of the line, which I always thought, that kind of blew my mind, right? I get to do this. But I always knew, so the first few years, I was fine kind of doing it as a hobby and working in the corporate world. I had a degree and I had a pretty good job. But that itch was always there. I mean, like you said, I'm a baseball guy. That's my background. And I wanted to break into that baseball world. And this is one of the craziest things that ever happened to me. But the break there came when I was laid off from my corporate job. Our company was downsizing and I was laid off. So this was in the middle of the basketball season. So my thought process was, okay, I'll finish out the basketball season and I'll just see what happens from there. Well, a friend of mine that I had known since I was 13, she has nothing to do with baseball. Her kids were friends with the kids of the director of broadcasting with the Oakland A's. And they had an intern, basically a paid internship position where you're a broadcast assistant in the radio booth. So I applied for that and I got it. And I was one of two guys that was in the radio booth with Ken Korak and Vince Cotroneo, the A's radio team, for all home games. So I had 41 home games, I think. Well, they knew my background at St. Mary's. And when the pregame show host went on vacation on July 4th, I got to fill in for him. And that was my break there. It was just the fact that I built all that experience at St. Mary's. And because they knew that I had experience broadcasting, all of a sudden I was hosting the A's pregame show on the radio here in the Bay Area. And I got to do, I think, 4 or 5 games that first year. The second year, which was 2019, I got about 21 pre and post game shows. And then last year, 4 spring training games, play-by-play for a major league team. I mean, I still have to pinch myself sometimes, that I got to do that. And it's happened fast, man. It really has. The last couple of years, ever since I've dedicated myself to this full time, it's really happened fast. And I'm not where I want to be yet, but this whole process is so much fun. I am so excited, John, to go through a full baseball season in the Cal League, and take the bus up and down the state. I mean, I know that sounds weird, but I'm really excited to do that. I'm excited to get to know these prospects, get to know, guys in the organization, because I've done that already on the media side now with the A's. And, I think when it boils down to it, I feel like I've worked really hard over the last couple of years, and I just feel really fortunate to be in the position that I am with a program like St. Mary's, and to be in the position I am where I've always wanted to be, doing baseball day in and day out. I mean, for me, it's just, I think I put in the man hours, and, I wasn't too impatient when the breaks were there. I was lucky enough to get them, and I'm just trying to take advantage of it.
And we'll dive into your baseball side in the second half of the show, because I think that's both of our wheelhouses. That's where we got our start. And you have some really fun stuff to talk about, like you alluded to on the baseball side. But before we go to our first break, I do have a couple of things that I want to get into. One on your back to your earlier transition into broadcasting, and then a little bit of Gale's talk, which I'm sure you won't object to.
Let's do it, baby. By the way, I did not mention, sorry to cut you off, but I should mention this is year 9 now that I'm doing the St. Mary's men. So that was 9 years ago that all that happened.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry about that.
And one thing that came to mind for me was you were talking about your prep time and your prep routine and how it's evolved and how much goes into it. I was wondering, being a former Division I athlete yourself, knowing what that took to be a high-level athlete, and then B, knowing their life, knowing the athlete's life, what they're doing, what they're going through, what they might think of the media. How does that D1 playing experience help you when you're now the guy asking the questions?
That's a really good question. I think that in my experience, just understanding at their level what competition is like is huge. And just having that competitive drive. And honestly, all of us in this business do. But, maybe I suppose having been there as an athlete, maybe adds a layer of context to it, having done the, 6 a.m. weights and as punishment, we'd have to run to this cross that sits on top of the hill above the St. Mary's campus. Going through that stuff with other people and understanding the bond that gets formed in doing those things, I think that adds a level of context. But I think the competitiveness thing is, being an athlete and kind of having that kind of instilled in me already. I think that's big. And I was never the caliber of athlete that dealt with the media like these guys do. So, I think that as long as you're yourself, that no matter what you're doing, as long as you're being yourself, I think people will recognize that and respect that. And, I think that's all anybody wants in terms of when, they're talking to somebody and answering questions. I think that's all anybody wants is for people to be honest with them. So that's really what I try to do. I just try to be myself. And yeah, I do understand the competitiveness and like I said, the bond that you have with your teammates and your coaches and everybody in the program and what it takes to get there. I think everyone gets that, but having lived it, maybe it adds another level of context. But I think I'm excited to see how it manifests itself on the baseball side, because that's really what I'm used to. But dealing with the student athletes and understanding the grind that they go through to get there, I think that's kind of where we find kind of a common ground, and maybe something that gives me a unique perspective that maybe not all broadcasters have.
Now, this past year, of course, everybody on all sides has had to change a lot of things up, and of course, it's hit broadcasting. Of course, COVID has hit broadcasting and how we do our jobs. And a few weeks ago, I think it's about a few weeks ago, I saw a video on social media of you doing a Gales basketball road game from home. So that brought up an interesting discussion point. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take us off the screen for a minute and put that video up so people can get a look at Alex Jensen calling St. Mary's College basketball from home.
High screen from Toss. Kuzi takes it around to the left. Now weaving his way into the paint. Shot fake goes up. Banks it home with 1.8 to go. And the Gales have a 2-point lead. Tommy Kuzi putting the team on his back down the stretch. Making his way into the paint and giving the Gales a 2-point lead with 1.8 to play.
Gosh, I miss having that voice right beside me.
Yeah, dude, it's been crazy this year, man. I mean, because luckily I'm obviously lucky enough to travel with the team normally, and this year's been strange, dude. I have called games from places that, and what's gone on in my personal life too. I mean, my girlfriend who took that video, actually, that was Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving. My girlfriend who took that video got a new job in Kansas City. So in December, I helped her move to Kansas City from here in California. This is during basketball season, mind you. And we ended up at her parents' place for the holidays in New Hampshire. So I have called games from a hotel room in Kansas City. I've called luckily that game was on cable, right? I've called games off of the computer that I'm talking to you on right now. In a hotel room, standing up at the breakfast bar in her new place, in her closet in her parents' house, all over the place, man. It's been wild. It's been interesting, but I'm really tired of calling games off the screen, man. I can't tell you that enough. It won't be the last time this year either. It's been crazy.
Now walk us through a little bit of the firsthand experience of, I guess, since March, because the pandemic hit at probably the worst possible time for the college basketball world. And that was, from a sporting perspective, one of the first big moments was no March Madness. Yeah. And so talk us through what your experience has been from the outset of this now through, like we just talked about, we're the point where we're finding these new innovative ways to keep the show going.
I'll never forget when they canceled the NCAA tournament. I remember exactly where I was. I remember exactly how I found out. And what's weird is that, this happened just after the West Coast Conference tournament. I did not go to the West Coast Conference tournament. I was in Arizona doing spring training games. Like those were the 4 games that the A's had open to me, was during the West Coast Conference tournament. Of course, I had to take it. So I was actually in Arizona, and I got 2 games in Arizona, John. 2 games in Arizona. The third one was rained out, and the fourth one was rained out. That was the day after I think it was Rudy Gobert tested positive with the Utah Jazz. And at that point, the talk was about, because at this point St. Mary's is a shoo-in for the NCAA tournament for March Madness. I mean, they're going to be a single-digit seed, and this all really happened at a bad time for St. Mary's conference, the West Coast Conference, because you were going to have 3 teams in the tournament, which they don't get very often. I think it's a 2-bid league normally, but 3 teams is pretty good. Gonzaga, BYU, St. Mary's, all would have been in the NCAA tournament. You're talking about a lot of money when you missed the tournament. I remember I was in line to get lunch, and I saw the tweet that the NCAA tournament was canceled. And I think he kind of got the feeling that it was coming eventually. There was some hope that they would postpone it for a couple of months, but now we know that wouldn't have been feasible because here in the States, we can't figure it out, man. We're still we're not locked down, but we're still dealing with this, and the whole world is. But we haven't been exactly a model of the way to get rid of this thing down here. And that's the last I'll mention about that. I have my own thoughts on that, but I'll shove that to the side.
Another show at another place.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, after that, it was just dead quiet because, as I mentioned, I'm sitting here ready to start my first minor league baseball season with the Ports. And, we don't get official word until June that there's not going to be a minor league season. I think everyone kind of saw the writing on the wall by the end of April. But we don't get the official word. I think it was June or July. At first it was like, okay, well, we're going to start in a month that starts with J, because the Ports had me do a podcast, which I'm still doing. It's called the Portside Pod. You can check it out wherever you get podcasts. Shameless plug. But that's the Portside Pod, by the way. But, so I had our owner our team president on my podcast, and thought at that time in the middle of April we'll start the season in a month that begins with J. That obviously did not happen. In fact, the season was called in a month that starts with J. So, it's interesting because the first month or two, it felt like days would crawl by, but then after a while, it was like every day was the same, and they would kind of go by quickly. We got to go back and visit my girlfriend's parents in New Hampshire, for a month, which was nice. It was nice to get away and just kind of hang out on the East Coast, in New England, for a month, and then we come back, and I was watching a 5-year-old. I was like nannying basically. Watching him take Zoom class and helping him with his homework to make some extra money because there was nothing to do. So it was nice to have basketball season back. It was great when baseball came back in July. I think we all needed that. And it was nice when the NBA and NHL obviously came back. We were just dying for, something to watch on TV. My girlfriend's a Bruins fan, so she had some fun with the playoffs. And then, finally when college basketball came back, I think by that time it almost, I don't know about you, man, but when I watch a movie now or watch something on TV, I find myself feeling uncomfortable because the people that I'm watching are not wearing masks, and I've got to snap myself out of it. It's kind of scary how normal this whole thing has become. But I think once we reached a certain point in the year for me, I was just hoping that college basketball would happen. And once it was clear that would happen, however I was able to call games was fine because it was a return to some sort of a sense of normalcy.
I think we're kind of all in a different, in that same boat in different ways. Where the frame of reference, for the most part, up here in Canada, of course, is the NHL and junior hockey in the smaller communities. And I'm not sure how much attention you pay to the World Junior Hockey Championship over Christmas, but up here that is everything.
I know who won, John. I know who won.
I was trying to talk fast to get past that, but and we do have to take a break here in a minute. But the frame of reference I have for hockey is when the NHL finished their season in the summer. They did it in a big building with nobody there, and they set up some fancy video displays and tried to make it as entertaining as possible. And I think at that point, I think everybody was just clamoring for something that people ate it up. And now when you got to the World Juniors, they used the same building with the same setup, except the juniors didn't have the same kind of money. So it was more bland, the presentation. And by then, I think a lot of people were saying, okay, it's hockey, but we've seen the same thing before, and it's not what we're used to. Is there any kind of that, any type of that kind of feeling that you picked up on with sports, where it's like, okay, we're grateful to have it, but we'd love to have it get closer to what it was.
No doubt. I mean, I've talked about calling games on a monitor already, but calling games in an empty gym is weird too. Fans make this, man. I mean, it is not the same without fans in the building. It's just not. And I know we're not in a position right now where, we haven't earned the right, if you will, to put fans in the building or in a stadium, unless, I mean, they're kind of spread out. But that's what makes the experience, man. I mean, having that electricity, that passion that resonates throughout the building. I mean, it changes the way the game is played, in my opinion, especially a sport like basketball, where I feel like there is such an intimate relationship between the atmosphere the game is being played in and the way the game goes. You talked about the NHL. I thought the NHL did a great job with the playoffs last year. And, they didn't have one positive test, I don't think. And the NBA, I mean, the same thing could be said for the NBA, right? But, the NHL did a fantastic job. But, I mean, you're seeing it now, right? I mean, like you said, once we got sports back, it was like, okay, great, sports are back. But, and we really didn't care that much about not having fans. I mean, I guess we just kind of took it in stride because we were so happy to have something to watch. But there's no doubt, man. I mean, it's a game changer having fans in the stands again. I can't wait until the day that we can fill these buildings again, because it's just not the same. I mean, like I said, and you're really feeling it now, right? I mean, the fans really make this experience what it is in all sports. So I just can't wait till the day when we can all get together again in whatever building, wherever we like to go, to watch our favorite team and do that, because that's what makes the experience as much fun as it is.
Absolutely. We got to take our first break, but we'll be back on the other side. We'll talk a little bit more baseball and get into a little bit more about Alex's career here on Behind the Mic on Amateur Sports TV. And welcome back to Behind the Mic on Amateur Sports TV. Jonathan Hodgson talking with St. Mary's College basketball voice Alex Jensen, and also the play-by-play voice of the Stockton Ports, the single A affiliate of the Oakland Athletics. And let's switch gears a little bit. We've mentioned elements of your your baseball work so far, and of course your playing career. But I want to get into something that we haven't covered on the show all that much yet. And you're about as good of a person to talk to it as anybody. Your role coming on with the Stockton Ports, as you said earlier, was affected, of course, by COVID. But in the midst of that, Major League Baseball has executed a major restructure of minor league baseball. Take us through kind of the overview of what's going on in the minor league baseball world and how that's affected people like yourself working for the Ports.
Luckily, I haven't been affected yet, but I know, my heart goes out to a lot of people who, minor league baseball and listen, I haven't been through a full season yet in minor league baseball, so I can't add a whole lot of context to this, but I do know how hard everyone in minor league baseball works for not the same payout that you get in Major League Baseball. So my heart goes out to, the franchises that have been taken out of affiliated ball. For those who don't know, about 40 minor league teams in a major reshuffling of the minor leagues have been taken out of affiliated baseball. So, for example, where you are, John, in Vancouver, that would be the equivalent of the Vancouver Canadians no longer being affiliated with a Major League Baseball club and basically operating as an independent team. So what happened was Major League and minor league baseball up until this point were two separate operating bodies. They had a relationship together, but where Major League Baseball agreed to send their players to the minor league teams, and minor league teams obviously would have an affiliation with a certain club, and those they would host those players for the season. Well, Major League Baseball has, from the best that I can understand, it's a little complicated, but from the best that I can understand, they're basically taking over the operations of minor league baseball. And part of what the owners wanted to do was cut down the number of minor league teams out there. So there have been 40 teams that are no longer affiliated. They just announced last month the official list of 40 teams, 43, something like that are no longer affiliated with the Major League Baseball club. Now, most of these teams are lower level, short season clubs. So like Vancouver used to be, the whole Pioneer League, just about the whole New York Penn League almost, and the entire Appalachian League is now, they're like draft leagues. They're for amateurs now. They're no longer, they're still affiliated with Major League Baseball, but they don't host prospects. They host draft prospects.
The most basic way of explaining it that has been told to me is basically that the short season level has been eliminated.
The short season level, right.
There's no more short season baseball, and rookie level players will now play out of spring training complexes. And we actually, a few weeks ago, we had on Rob Fay on the show, a friend of the show who's the former radio play-by-play voice of the Vancouver Canadians, and they've won that organization has won minor league organization of the year a couple of times, and they've been absolute rock stars at the short season level. And they did keep their affiliation, and they did keep their affiliation with the Blue Jays, but they have been bumped up to Advanced A. And that has had an effect on the Cal League where you are, where it's been slid back to A ball.
Yeah, exactly. So basically what happened was, like you said, all those rookie teams go to the complexes, like the spring training complex, which I guess logistically makes sense. And as a result of that, the Northwest League, where the Canadians are, was bumped up a level, or two levels, I guess, all the way up to high A, where the Cal League used to be, as was the Midwest League. The Midwest League used to be low A. They are now high A. And the California League and the Florida State League were dropped from high A to low A. So, all things considered, I'm one of the lucky ones. and us in Stockton are one of the lucky ones because, we're in a good position. There's good facilities there. We have a strong relationship with the A's, I think. And, we're in a good spot. And financially, we're in a good spot, which can't be said, you can't say that for a lot of minor league teams right now. So essentially we are now low A, which affects the level of player that we're going to get. I mean, we're not going to get the highest, the same that Stockton had gotten for however many years, back 30, 40 years since the Cal League's been high A. But our league was also affected because one of the teams in our league was on that list, Lancaster. So they are now out of affiliated baseball, and Fresno, John, which was a AAA team. This is a AAA ballpark now dropping down to low A.
I've been to a game there, yeah.
Well, yeah, Fresno will now be a low A part of the California League, I think affiliated of the Rockies, which is great for me because I'll get to call games from a AAA, press box. But it's a bummer for Fresno.
A couple of years ago, before any of this was set in motion, it was just an individual change. Colorado Springs got dropped from AAA all the way to, at the time, rookie ball.
Yeah.
And that's an odd feeling, an odd look. Seeing a big AAA ballpark with a low level like that. But another thing, before we switch gears back to you a little bit, as we start to get closer to the finish line here this evening, was all those displaced teams, and I want to bring this back to kind of the fan level, to relate it closer to the amateur sports level. One of the loops that we talked about off the top, you played in the Western Canadian Baseball League. At one time, multiple markets in the WCBL were either AAA or Pioneer League rookie ball markets. And when minor league baseball essentially left Canada in the early 2000s, with the exception of Vancouver, and for a short time Ottawa, although they left a few years after, what happened in those markets, like Lethbridge, like Medicine Hat, AAA in Edmonton, Calgary tried, but they had more trouble. They ended up losing the Dogs to Okotoks. What I'm getting at is, how important is it, do you think, for those markets who have lost their affiliated teams, those 40 or 42 markets, how important do you think it is for them to now pivot and not sit in the, we lost our affiliation, it's over? How important do you think it is for the baseball fans in those communities to pivot to the next chapter and see what they can do to keep baseball in their town?
Yeah, I think it's hugely important, especially, for a game that is really trying to grow itself in this new generation, right? It's no secret that over the last 20 years, baseball has fallen in popularity, right? I mean, football and basketball, at least here in the States, football and basketball have kind of leapfrogged baseball over the last 20, 25 years. So yeah, I think it's important for the game, for those communities, to embrace what's coming now. I mean, we talked about with the Pioneer League, right? The Appalachian League, those leagues, those college leagues, those prospect leagues is what they're calling them, are still run by Major League Baseball, to the best of my understanding. So, that is something. I mean, you're not going to be having, top prospects roll through your town. But in all honesty, over the last 10, 15 years, top prospects weren't really rolling through the Pioneer League. And I think that's part of the reasoning for Major League Baseball to cut it, to not have those leagues be an affiliated pro ball anymore, because, I saw some quotes from scouts basically saying it's a waste of their time to go to the Pioneer League because there's really only one or two guys that have a chance at making a big league roster someday. So, I just think from that perspective, I understand why. I don't like the fact that affiliated baseball is being taken out of these communities, But from that perspective, I can see why they would do it. But yeah, I think it's really important that Major League Baseball made it a priority to keep baseball in these communities. And, I think it's important for the communities to embrace it. I mean, I guess we'll see, right? We'll see how it goes. But like I said, I think that there is somewhat of a win-win there, right? Where Major League Baseball can run the minor leagues the way they want to run it. And these communities can still have the sport there, which, I mean, I hear from so many people about, going to the ballpark. It's just as much about going to the ballpark and being there with other people and seeing people you may only see in the summer as it is about the game on the field, which you still get, right? You still get that with a prospect league.
Absolutely. And so taking him back to your career a little bit, we've talked about being part of A's coverage and now doing what you can with the Ports until the Cal League can get back on the field. Take us back, and we've talked about the transition from playing to calling games. But from a broadcaster perspective, when you first got into it or you first got interested in it, who were some of the people that you listened to coming up that either you remember as a kid or who influenced your approach or your style, mentors, anything like that?
That's a good question. Growing up in the Bay Area, I've been really lucky to be able to listen to a lot of these guys. I mean, I grew up an A's fan, so Bill King was one of the guys that I grew up listening to. But his partner, who is now the A's lead guy, his name's Ken Korak. When I first started to understand this was something I really wanted to do, Ken Korak was the lead voice of the A's, and he still is. And he's a guy that I really, his voice is kind of synonymous with baseball, honestly, for me. But he's a guy that I listened to quite a bit when I was coming up, and that I tried to model myself after a little bit. I really liked his style. Across the Bay, obviously, Vince Cotroneo too, since I started working with the A's, has really become a big influence on me too, in terms of just preparation. I mean, he's one of the most prepared people in Major League Baseball. The amount of notes that guy brings to the broadcast booth is really impressive. Across the Bay, we've been really lucky to listen to John Miller for a really long. He's been doing the Giants for 25 years. Dave Fleming is his partner in the radio booth. I think we're blessed here in the Bay Area to have two of the best radio booths in Major League Baseball, with Ken Korak and Vince Cotroneo in Oakland, and John Miller and Dave Fleming with the Giants. And Kruk and Kipe, obviously, I think their fame kind of precedes them now. But growing up an A's fan, like I said, Bill King, who's done all three sports here in Oakland. Actually, there were a few seasons, John, where he did the A's, the Warriors, and the Raiders all in 1 year. So I think that's pretty impressive. But Bill King, Ken Korak, and then on the basketball side, Tim Roy, who is the radio play-by-play guy for the Warriors. I've certainly, he's been an influence on me as well, just listening to him. But in terms of being a mentor, Ken is certainly at the top of the list for me. I mean, especially getting to learn from him and from Vince the last couple of years, and from Ray Fosse the last couple of years, and working and being lucky enough to work with the A's and work with those guys on a day-to-day basis. I mean, those are the guys that I consider to be my mentors and guys that I lean on for advice in my career. And so, like I said, growing up in the Bay Area, I've been really lucky, and to listen to a lot of these guys that have had such a big influence on me. And, I think that getting to know them on a personal level has been even better because, I get to pick their brains and really see how they go about their business day in and day out.
And I think on the minor league side, other people who are in a similar place that you are, I think about people like Donnie Barnes, who did the Visalia Rawhide for a long time, and then did AAA in the Royals system. I think about somebody like Jesse Goldberg-Schrossler, who has been a rock star in the Blue Jays system, and now
Part of the A's?
their affiliation is over to the A's, so I'm sure you're going to get to know him. How important is that? Not only the mentor-mentee relationship, but how important is that to network with people in your same situation and prop each other up?
I don't think it can be understated. I really don't, because those people, people who understand the business, people who are in the business. I mean, those are the people who, when they pay you a compliment or when they give you feedback on your work or whatever, that really means the most. When those people have something nice to say or even constructive criticism, right? But I don't think there's any doubt. One thing I love about this business is that there's a real camaraderie amongst everybody, with all my colleagues and, everyone that is chosen to do this. I mean, it's almost like a fraternity, and I think one thing that I really appreciate is how willing everybody is to help each other. That cannot be understated, how important that is in any profession, really. I mean, you have to be able to take constructive criticism and et cetera, et cetera. I think everybody does, and whatever they decide to do, but having that, like I said, that camaraderie, that relationship, networking to not just develop a professional relationship, but a personal relationship with these people, I think is hugely important in any walk of life, but certainly in the broadcasting world is certainly no different. So getting to know those people and, even being able to pick their brain and, maybe steal little nuggets from them. I think that's a lot of fun. And like I said, the willingness that everyone has to help each other has really blown me away in this business.
And another one of the major league caliber people that he was my day one mentor on the baseball side, and has turned into really, really cherished just friend in life, is Jerry Howarth, who did the Toronto Blue Jays radio for 36 years before retiring and giving way to Ben Wagner a couple of years ago. And he's one that you have also had some contact with. What's that like, being able to have get some words of advice or have the ear of one of the most accomplished people to call games at the major league level?
It's invaluable, man. I mean, those people know what it takes to get to where, everyone that's chosen this as a profession wants to get. And like I said, I mean, I want to reiterate this point, that the fact that so many people who are at the pinnacle of this business, the things that they do to help the people who are coming up, it blows me away, and Jerry is certainly no exception. And I think that the best thing they can do is to be honest with you. I remember Jerry was brutally honest with me one time, and it really woke me up. So I think that certainly their words, their feedback means a ton, because like I said, they know what it takes to get there. But again, I mean, getting there is one thing. Helping other people with their careers is something else. And it speaks to the type of person that Jerry is, the type of person that Ken Korak here is, the type of person that everyone that I have come into contact with, that I've asked for feedback and they've given it to me and they've been honest. It really says something about who they are. And we're lucky that this profession is filled with people like that.
And what the biggest common theme for me all the way along has been, sometimes people say that you shouldn't meet your heroes. Well, the biggest common thread that has me so passionate about this industry is every time I've met somebody like Jerry, somebody like Peter Labardius on the hockey side, somebody like Rob Fay, who's done minor league baseball for a long time and is now a show host in Vancouver. Every single time I've met one of these quote big time or big league people. They're the best people I have ever met.
Oh yeah.
And they are exceedingly willing to give you time to talk to you, to help you along. So that goes to what you're talking about, in how important it is to be the same person. And I'm gonna use a cheesy line, but be the same person away from the mic as you are behind the mic, which is kind of where we got the show name from.
And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Being yourself. And, athletes will see that and you kind of get what you want out of them just by being yourself and developing a relationship. The same thing can be said for everybody behind the microphone, and for yourself outside of your professional life, just being yourself and developing personal relationships first. I think that goes a long way.
Absolutely. So if people want to tune in to the Gales, where can they find you?
Let's see. We are on TuneIn Radio. So if you have the TuneIn Radio app, you can just search St. Mary's, spell out St. Mary's basketball, and there'll be a white background with a blue SMC logo, and you can click on that. You can subscribe, and I will tweet. You can follow me on Twitter if you'd like, @Jensen @Jensen86. And I always tweet, a link to the games whenever we have one live. This is airing on Friday. So tomorrow, St. Mary's is playing host to the #1 team in the country, the Gonzaga Bulldogs, who are on another level this year. But it'll be fun to see them in person. It's always a fun game to watch, St. Mary's and Gonzaga. So that game will be tomorrow at 5 o'clock Pacific time. So if you want to listen, I tweet out the link before every game. And again, TuneIn Radio and St. Mary's basketball is the network that you want to follow.
And you mentioned the Stockton Ports podcast as well. Where can you find that?
Wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. It's called the Portside Pod. So, I've outside of baseball season, we've slowed down probably like once a month, but we're going to start picking it up now here again, trying once every 2 weeks or so. Put out an episode leading into baseball season and maybe ratchet it up even a little bit more during spring training.
All right. Well, Alex, thanks so much for the visit. I know the two of us go way back, and we're talking about, people, how important the people are in the business. And I've been waiting to get you on here for a long time, because you have been, just you and me talking for a minute. You've been one of those people for me from day one, like we were talking about on the job, coming alongside me in those early days, doing some work with me, going through those experiences of winning 3 rings together when I was quite young. And now as time goes on, it's all those common experiences kind of are the basis for going through real life together now. So thanks for coming on, and thanks for everything.
John, I appreciate that, man. It means a lot to me. And it was a pleasure to come on and chop it up with you a little bit. Hopefully next time, maybe we can get into some, Wimble road trips through Saskatchewan. We'll get Brett Thomas on here. We'll have some fun. But this has been great, man. I really appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
We'll have you on again for sure, and we'll find out. We'll find some way to have fun next time. All right, we're going to toss it to one more break. Thanks, Alex, for coming on. We'll come back, and I'll be back with our wrap up here on Behind the Mic on Amateur Sports TV. All right. So I'm gonna do my wrap up solo. So if you wanna go and start working, you can, or we can chat on the other side for a minute.
Yeah, I'll stick around. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be a say goodbye to you at least.
I'll drop you off the feed. I'll do my wrap up, which is same thing, 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll chat on the other side.
Cool, man. Sounds good.
And once again, welcome back to Behind the Mic on Amateur Sports TV. Jonathan Hodgson back with you for the wrap-up. Really fun episode here this evening in conversation with the radio voice of St. Mary's College men's basketball, Alex Jensen, and the radio voice of the Stockton Ports single A affiliate of the Oakland Athletics. There's a lot to learn there and a lot of fun had. So we appreciate Alex coming on, and we hope you enjoyed, and we hope you learned, our sportcaster types learned something along the way. Before we go, we want to remind you that if you've missed any of our previous episodes, you can find the Behind the Mic archive playlist, all our previous episodes. I believe we're on week 10 now, if I'm not mistaken. They can all be found on YouTube, on the ASTV YouTube page, and that's where you can find all our archives of all our other ASTV shows. We go live every Friday night, just like this week, every Friday night, 5 Pacific time, 8 Eastern time on Facebook, YouTube, and we've also added Periscope to the ASTV network. And if you want to learn more about amateur sports TV, we are expanding more shows, more game coverage when the games come back, of course. If you want to learn more and if you want to learn more about potentially being part of the team, you can go to amateursports.tv. So we'll be back next week, same time, same place, with another sportscaster. But once again, thanks so much to Alex Jensen for coming on. Thanks for watching. Jonathan Hodgson for ASTV. We'll talk to you next week.